What is good, YouTube? Quinn Wade basketball analysis coming to y'all with that analysis tonight. Happy weekend. We having another one. We enjoying it. We're gonna talk about one of the best streaks and longest and most successful franchises of the last 3 decades, the San Antonio Spurs. Even though they didn't start this decade off the right way by missing the playoffs the last 2 years, I think that will continue this season. They still looking for that franchise guy to build a team around. Haven't been able to attain it just yet. Haven't been terrible enough to be able to be a top five team in the lottery, and haven't been great enough to make the playoffs. They've been in a playing conversation the last 2 years. Now that they let DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge and those guys move on, I think this is a year when they completely hit rock bottom. They're going to have a lot of guys that they're going to try out, a lot of guys that are going to see what they have, and a lot of guys that are going to continue to build upon and see what they can become for this team and this organization. But ultimately, they're looking for that guy, and they just don't have it right now, and there's really none available that they can get with the assets that they have. So when I look at the Spurs, it's going to be a rough year, and let's talk about what to expect from them. When you look at Al-Farouq Aminu, this guy has had a little bit of injury history. This guy has not been able to shoot the ball the way that teams feel like he can become and can do. Hasn't been able to figure that part out. His defense has slipped as he has got older and has been a little bit beat up, like I said before. He is still getting paid pretty good money for the fact that he is probably a stretch forward that really can't shoot. So he's a switchable forward at this point in his career because of his length and his size. But I still look at Al-Farouq Aminu as a guy that's going to compete, is going to give you what he can. It's not going to be what it was before. But at this point, he's going to be a rotation player in the future. And this is just going to be a start of that with the Spurs this season. Bates Diop, he's another guy. I don't think he's going to get crazy playing time. Is a legitimate 6'8", 25 years old, interesting role player. I like what he brings to the table. I like his game. I feel like he is a Spursius type player. I feel like he is going to be solid for them again this year. Don't expect anything crazy. Don't expect something amazing. Just expect him to come in and do what Greg Popovich asked him to do and just play within the flow of the offense and produce that way. Zach Collins, we look at him as a guy that's been injury prone, a guy that a lot of people look at his potential and say that he's a great player. He could be this, he could be that. Ultimately hasn't shown it because he's been always nurturing and rehabbing injuries. Has shown that he can be a stretch four, a guy that can play some five. Hasn't really shown enough consistency defensively. Hasn't even shown consistently when it comes to scoring the ball at this point in his career. But he is a 23-year-old that showed that he can play at the NBA level and can be a potential starter. The Spurs wanted to bring him into their system and in their culture, put him in the right role, give him a second chance and the opportunity, and we'll see if he can take advantage of that and rewrite his career as he's only 23 years old. Ebanks, I don't really think he will have a significant role on his team. They have a lot of guys that play his position that are better than him, so I don't really see him having a significant role on this team this year outside of playing some spot minutes every blue moon or every couple games or even some games just getting 10 to 15 minutes. But other than that, that's going to be his cap this year as they have other guys that's going to be prioritized over him. Brent Forbes is back. He ended up going to win a title with the Bucks. Came back to Greg Popovich. Gonna give them shooting, a guy that really can come in and give you double-digit points. Might be hot, might be cold, but gives you spacing and gives you a guy that you have to pay attention to just because he can shoot the three. They're not asking him to do anything crazy or be a defensive stopper. They just come in them to give us what you bring to the table and what you have done for us in the past and just do it again this season and just stay healthy. Kelden Johnson is an interesting guard slash forward for the Spurs, undersized for the forward position. At the end of the day, still want to see that shooting pick up consistently because they're going to need that as this team does lack a little bit of that when it comes to guys that are going to be their guys until they find a real guy. But Kelden Johnson is just an interesting young prospect that they're trying to build up, really trying to build his confidence and really trying to utilize him in multiple versatile ways. And that's what you want to do. Want the player to be the best player for the team and help them contribute. And he showed that he can be good in a lot of areas. Not great or elite in any area right now in his career, but we'll see what he becomes within 2 to 3 years. Trey Jones, another young guy. He is just an interesting spark plug type of guy. Gonna go out there and compete. Go out there and try to give you some tenacity. Try to go out there and give you some muscle hustle at that point guard position. Going to be interesting to see what his role and what he's going to be in the NBA. That's something that we actually have to see when he starts playing, and we'll see if he can have a significant impact in his league, even if it's not with the Spurs long term. Jock, I don't even want to bring him up because he's not going to play that much, if not at all. And if he does, he's real raw and really is going to be a huge contributor at the NBA level at this point in his career. But we'll see how Greg Popovich and them utilize him. Dub McDermott is a bucket getter, but has turned more into an evolution of just a scorer that if you need him to hit a mid-range, if you need him to come off screens and hit a three, he can still give you some type of in-between game, but mostly used as a shooter now, which has gave him longevity in his league. Will give them size, will give them spacing, and will give them a guy that's going to keep the defense honest and somebody they have to pay attention to. But he can also play both guard and wing positions, so it just gives them a little bit of versatility to go small or just give them more spacing if they want to go with a lot more shooting with guys like DeJounte Murray is also going to be the star of this team. Was a guard, turned into more of a point guard. Hasn't really became an elite level scorer or highly great scorer, but has been a solid player because of his defense and has turned into a respectable point guard in his league. Hasn't became that franchise point guard that you wish he would become, but he's still growing and developing. And if he can become that, they have him under contract. And if he becomes that even 2 years from now, because he's still developing, you can still give him an extension and then keep him a little bit longer, and then you'll be fine and protected either way. Jakob Pertl is an interesting guy. Has been billed as a solid rim protector, but when they traded for him, they knew that he was a project and they had to develop a lot of his characteristics and understanding IQ of the game. He can protect the rim. He is a solid rebounder. His post game hasn't really developed into what you would want it to be. Neither has his offensive game, but it takes years for centers to really develop a good post game and a good offensive game. He has become solid, but hasn't become great or elite in the offensive area, but has become a respectable defender in the paint. And usually you want your centers to be able to rebound and protect the paint. At least he has shown that he can become that and is that in this league at 25. And you just want to continue to build his confidence in his game as long as he's under his roster. Joshua Primo was a draft that a lot of people questioned just because he was very raw, body wise, when it comes to being a shooting guard, and the fact that he had to develop the other offensive areas like finishing, floaters, scoring, has shown some flashes that he can shoot, shown some flashes that he is very confident in his abilities to put the ball in the basket, still has to do it at the NBA level, still has to show that he can do it in multiple versatile ways on the offensive end, and we just haven't seen him play at the NBA yet. I think he's 3 to 4 years away from being a legitimate player that you can trust and get the ball to and make buckets and decisions. Just not there yet, but we only saying that because he's 18 and hasn't played in the NBA yet. So he's on the wait and see. When we look at Luka and we look at Joe, those guys might not even make the roster, and if they do, they won't have a significant impact on this team. Devin Vasel was a guy that made this team just because of potential. He had the body, he had the potential to be a good 3-and-D guy. Hasn't become close to that coming into the NBA. Hasn't been a great defender to me. Hasn't been the shooter that you would want him to be. But he showed flashes of that in college. Hasn't shown it really at the NBA level. And it's mostly because they have better guards and players that are overall been better than him. They knew that. That's the same problem with Primo. They're eventually going to have to trade some of these guards for somebody else that fit or just go in a completely different direction, as all these guys aren't going to be able to stay on this roster and be a part of this future. But what you do get to see which ones are fitting what you're trying to do, see which ones are worth keeping, and then you just trade the other ones and move in a different direction when the right guy becomes available. Same thing with Lonnie Walker, another guy that has shown flashes that he can really be this slash and dashing mid-range slash, a guy that can hit some threes spotly, and he hasn't really been able to do that at the NBA level just yet. but he is only 22 years old. We see flashes that he can be this dynamic scorer that can change paces and really slice up defenses, but hasn't really been able to put it together and hasn't really even been able to shoot consistently enough to be a threat outside. Potential can really cost you. They went with a guy that was proven at the college level and hasn't really developed to even the starter caliber player so far in the NBA. But, we'll see what he brings to the table this year. Derek White has been more of a proven player, hasn't really been a great shooter, has been a solid to decent defender, especially respectable around the league, but hasn't been able to figure out the offensive game when it comes to putting the ball in the basket multiple ways. He is a little older at 27 years old. Still don't know what he's going to be in this league because he's not the greatest passer, not the greatest scorer, not the greatest shooter, but he is great at what he does do, and that's just being a versatile guy on the offensive end, just knowing how to play the game, knowing how to play his game, and just living with the result. But hasn't really been elite or great at any area to me on the court, and that's just been a huge problem with him, especially because he is age 27 and he's already under contract and hasn't really shown any great improvements at the other areas when it comes to scoring the basketball. And then we just look at Thaddeus Young, a guy that has had a better season in Chicago, and they have moved on from him already. Just a big wing that can play multiple positions, give you some solid defense, give you some interior scoring and some rebounding, and really just going to go out there and compete because he's still trying to fight for a chance to stay in the league for a couple more years and possibly be on a contender to win a title. But other than that, they need a wing because they lost Rudy Gay and those type of guys that can just give them size, athleticism, and some interior scoring and just some switchability at those positions as they do lack mobility and length at those 3 and 4 positions. And that's something that Thaddeus can definitely bring to the table. But ultimately, when we look at this team, they have a lot of collections of talent. They have a lot of players that really look good, that really does play well, that understands the game, plays the game the right way, aren't really greedy, aren't really selfish, and right out just love playing with each other. That's what I see with this team. They just lack elite talent. They just lack elite offensive players that can really get to where they want, do whatever they want, and put the defense at their mercy. They don't have one guy on this roster that can do that, and that's why they just struggle to close and win and stay in games, especially against better teams. The coaching really instilled the right mentality of how to play the game on both ends of the court. They just don't have enough talent and just don't have enough great decision or offensive players to really overcome that deficit because they don't have it at all. And until they get a guy or guys that can do it, they will continually be a team that can beat you, a team that can stay with you. And if you make a couple mistakes or you don't finish the game the right way, they will take advantage of it and they will capitalize off of it and they will defeat you. But ultimately, they will continue to fall short and they will continue to lose games just because they have enough to compete, but not enough to win at a consistent basis against the good and the great teams in the NBA. And it's unfortunate for the Spurs fans because they've been able to win for so long. But what comes up must come down. Now they're coming back to reality, and it's just about them getting back to winning. It might take a couple more years. This year, I don't believe that they'll do it either. But maybe if you lose more games than you did last year, you get a lottery pick. Maybe you can get that guy that you really feel confident can lead this team in the right direction, especially under the culture that they have built so far in the NBA. And I still feel like they're teaching and showing these guys the right things. They just don't have the requisite talent to get the job done at the end of the day at the NBA level. And it's unfortunate, but every team and organization has to go through this. It's just about how they're going to get that talent. And when they get it, just cash in and try to go back to winning and ultimately getting back to a title. Won't happen this year, but we'll see what happens in the future. Other than that, I expect this team to miss the playoffs. I expect this team to be a play-in to out of the play-in type of team and ultimately be in the lottery again. But then again, that's what should happen. And they will still be a team that if you don't pay attention or if you don't respect them or you get a little fall asleep or you get a little bit too happy, they will beat you mentally and they will break you and they will get the job done. So you still got to go out there and beat them. If not, they'll beat you. And that's what they're going to be this year Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the video. See y'all tomorrow. Quinn Wade, basketball analysis signing out. And at the end of the day, do y'all thing.